She whispered, "I never wanted to hurt you," while holding the hand of the man who did. I could hear the DJ switching tracks behind us, some overplayed Ed Sheeran song bleeding into the room, and all I could think was, of course. Of course this conversation is happening while someone's aunt is screaming laughing on the dance floor 10 meters away, and my ex is squeezing the fingers of the same guy who burned my whole life down like it's a nervous tick. Her thumb kept brushing his knuckle, back and forth, while she stared up at me with those wide, glassy eyes I used to swear were honest. I could feel the condensation from the beer bottle in my hand dripping down my wrist, but I couldn't make my fingers move. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. "Let go of his hand," I said. I didn't mean to say it out loud, but it came out low and flat, sitting right on top of the bass from the speakers. Her eyes flicked down like she was only just now realizing what she was doing, but she didn't let go. If anything, his grip tightened. He shifted slightly behind her, half a step to the side, like he was still positioning himself between us even though I hadn't taken a single step forward. I could smell that stupid aftershave he wears, too sharp, too expensive for a guy who used to forget his half of the rent. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in the soft skin just above my collar. "Dan," she whispered, like I was the one who needed calming down, like I was overreacting to bumping into my ex-fiancé and my ex-best friend at the same wedding, dressed like they'd just stepped out of a magazine titled People Who Don't Regret Anything. It was a Saturday afternoon 3 years after everything blew up when I found myself in a beige function room with 2 bright fairy lights, watching the 2 people who'd gutted my life stand under the same string of plastic ivy. Mark, a mutual friend from uni, was getting married, and I'd argued with myself for weeks about whether to go. In the end, stubbornness won out. I told myself it was about showing I was over it. That I wasn't going to let them scare me away from my own circle of friends. The reality is I checked the RSVP list 3 separate times to make sure their names weren't on it. They were. Apparently Mark is just as bad at admin now as he was when he handed in essays late, because there they were, +1, each other like some twisted little bonus level. Anyway, backing up, I'm Daniel, 32, male, and until I was 29, I genuinely thought my life was on a predictable, solid track. I had a fiancé I adored, a best friend I trusted more than anyone, and a small but growing business we'd built together from bunting and coffee shop tables. I also had an impressive ability to ignore red flags, as long as they came attached to people I loved. I met her Emma first. This was 8 years ago, back when I was the guy who closed the office, turned the lights off, and still felt guilty walking past the receptionist on my way out in case she thought I wasn't working hard enough. I did its support for a chain of clinics, which is as glamorous as it sounds. Password resets, printers that refused to print, doctors who opened 30 tabs and then wondered why their system froze. Emma came in as a temp on the admin side. I remember the first thing about her wasn't even her face, it was her voice. She was at the front desk arguing politely but firmly with a supplier over the phone, and the way she said, "No, sorry, that's not what we agreed to, let's pull up the email," made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It wasn't that she was being aggressive, she just sounded like someone who believed, deep down, that she was allowed to take up space. I'd been raised to apologize when someone else bumped into me. That's the difference. We ended up in the same staff kitchen, both waiting for the microwave. She was leaning against the bench, scrolling her phone, tapping her nails absently on the formica. Her lunch was in one of those glass containers with perfectly arranged roasted vegetables and quinoa. Mine was leftover takeaway in a crumpled plastic container that might have been older than our working relationship. "You know the secret to stopping the microwave at 0001 so it doesn't beep?" she asked out of nowhere, glancing up at me. "I feel like this is a trick question," I said. "It's timing," she said, completely serious. "You need incredible reflexes. It's basically a martial art." I laughed, and her whole face lit up, like my laugh was a reward she'd been angling for. We started small, shared eye rolls in meetings, coffee runs. "I'll get this one, you save my inbox later." She'd come over to my desk with urgent IT matters that turned out to be a frozen Spotify window. I fixed her computer more than strictly necessary. She'd sit perched on the edge of my desk, swinging one leg, telling me about her useless ex who still owed her money and how she was going to travel as soon as I stopped being emotionally allergic to my account balance. It wasn't some thunderbolt, it was a drip. Little moments accumulating over months until I realized that if she was out sick or on leave, my whole day felt off. The night we actually shifted from coworkers, who flirt to something else, we were at a colleague's going-away drinks. You know the type, pub near the office, sticky tables, everyone making promises about staying in touch you both know they won't keep. Emma and I ended up on the footpath outside, sharing a packet of chips, the air cold enough that our breath showed when we laughed. "So what's your big plan, Dan?" she asked, squinting at me over a chip. "You going to be the IT guy here forever?" "I don't know," I said. "Stability's not the worst thing." She tilted her head. spoken like a man who has never had his heart broken by a surprise redundancy. Harsh, I said. What about you? You going to yell at suppliers over the phone until you're 80? Nah, she said, looking up at the streetlight like it was a star she could actually reach. I want something that's mine, a business, a project, something I can point at and say, I built that. Same, I heard myself say, surprising both of us. She turned back to me, eyes sharp. Yeah. I shrugged. I do some freelance stuff on the side. Fix people's networks, set up their systems. It's boring to talk about at parties, but it pays for my Netflix. She smiled, slow. Maybe we should build something then. I thought she meant it metaphorically. Turns out she meant it literally. End to Ryan. Ryan and I have been friends since we were 5. Our mums met at some playgroup and we bonded over both liking the red crayons. We went to the same primary school, high school, and somehow ended up at the same uni even though we picked different courses. If you'd asked me at 20 who I'd trust with my life, my PIN, my search history, it would have been him. Where I'm quiet and cautious, he's loud and charming. He's one of those guys who can walk into a room and have everyone laughing in 5 minutes. I used to joke that he was the one who distracted the bouncer while I snuck into the club. When I started talking about maybe leaving the clinic job and going out on my own, he was the first person I told. We were sitting on the floor of my old share house, surrounded by pizza boxes and the remains of a FIFA tournament I'd lost miserably. You should do it, he said, not even hesitating. You hate your boss, you're good at what you do, and Daniel King IT sounds legit as hell. It sounds like I fix printers in retirement villages, I said. Yeah, he grinned, but you'd be self-employed while you're doing it. He had experience with sales and client stuff. I had the technical side. It made sense on paper to team up. Emma at that point was more my friend crush than anything else, but she was there too at the planning stage. She helped me make the website, picking fonts and colors, writing copy that made network security audits sound almost sexy. She was the one who said, what if we brand it as more like a consultancy than an IT guy with a toolbox? I remember sitting around my tiny kitchen table with them, laptops open, laptops that all later ended up being collateral damage. Ryan sketching out numbers, Emma scribbling potential names on a notepad, me heart full in a way I didn't have words for. My best friend, the girl I was trying really hard not to be obvious about, and this shared future on the table between us. That's the part that still catches in my throat when people say, why would you go into business with your friend? That never works. It wasn't just a business. It was, I don't know, a way to knot our lives together. The relationship with Emma turned romantic a couple of months after the business launched. It was late, one of those nights where you look up and realize you've been staring at the same line of code for half an hour. She was helping me at the office because Ryan had bylaid early, drinks with a potential client, he'd said, which later turned out to be drinks with a potential hangover. We were both fried. She was sitting on the scratched-up couch eating M and Muzz from a mug, throwing the blue ones at the bin and missing every time. Why are you like this? I asked, amused. I only like the brown ones, she said. They're all the same, I said. They're not, and this is why your life lacks magic, she replied. I don't know what shifted. 1 second we were bickering, the next there was this silence. Not awkward, just waited. She looked at me, really looked, and said quietly, do you ever stop working? I asked, glancing at the monitor. Everything, she said. Fixing things, carrying everything. You and Ryan, you never stop. Stuff needs to get done, I said, because what do you even say to that? She put the mug down, stood up, and crossed the room in 3 steps. You're allowed to want things just for you, you know. Like what? I asked, suddenly very aware that she was standing close enough for me to see the tiny scar near her eyebrow I'd never noticed before. Like this, she said, and then she kissed me. That first kiss was clumsy. Our noses bumped, I almost tripped over a cable, and we both laughed into each other's mouths. It was perfect. From there, everything intertwined. Business, friendship, love. We became that couple who worked together, lived together, and still somehow had stuff to talk about at dinner. Ryan rolled his eyes at first. I'm third-wheeling my own company, he'd grown, but he seemed genuinely happy for us. He and Emma got on well. They had that easy banter some of my friends misread as chemistry, but I wasn't threatened. If anything, I liked that the 2 most important people in my life didn't hate each other. The first proper red flag from Ryan came about a year into the business, but like I said, I had a gift for treating red flags like modern art. We landed a big client, a medium-sized law firm that wanted to overhaul their entire system. It was the kind of contract that made the difference between we can pay rent this month and we can actually think about hiring someone. The problem was they paid late, like really late, In the meantime, we had bills. Ryan handled most of the client-facing stuff, including invoicing. He told me not to worry, that he'd chase them up. I took his word for it. I was busy with the actual work, servers, migrations, the real fun. One night I was going through the accounts because I couldn't sleep and numbers sometimes calm me down. I noticed some weirdness. Payments coming in didn't quite match the invoices. It wasn't massive, just off. 100 here, 200 there. And a few invoices that were marked as paid with no corresponding entry in the bank account. I brought it up the next day, trying to sound more curious than accusatory. Hey man, those McFarlane and Co payments, did they pay in cash or something? Ryan didn't even look up from his screen. Yeah, some of it, I banked it. Why? I'm just not seeing it, I said, flipping the notebook around to show him. Look, this one on the 15th, marked paid, but... He snatched the book, flicked through it quicker than he could possibly be reading. Accounting lag, dude, he said finally. I've got it under control. I'm talking to their finance chick. She's slow as hell. I hesitated. Can I see the emails? He frowned. Do you not trust me? The question hit me harder than it should have, because the truth is I did trust him. Of course I did. This was Ryan. Crayon's Ryan. Broke into the school pool with me, Ryan. I'm just trying to understand where we're at, I said. We can't keep floating stuff on the credit card. He sighed like I was being unreasonable. I'll forward you the thread, he said. He did later that day, emails between him and someone at the firm, long chains about processing delays and expect payment by end of month. It settled me, for a while. There were other little things. Times he'd forget to pay himself less when I took a smaller draw to cover emergencies. Jokes he made about being the face of the business while I was the back end, complete with a gross little butt wiggle that made Emma throw a pen at his head. Does that bother you? She asked me once when we were in bed, the room lit by the blue glow of her phone as she scrolled mindlessly. What? The way he talks sometimes, like he's above it somehow. I shrugged, staring at the ceiling. It's just Ryan, he's always been like that. Yeah, she said slowly, I guess. That was the thing, Ryan had always been like that, and in the past, it had always worked out. So when my gut twisted, I told it to shut up. The second red flag was technically more of a neon sign, but by then I was knee-deep in love and spreadsheets. Emma had moved in with me properly. Her stuff was in my wardrobe, her toothbrush next to mine, her photo stuck with a magnet to the fridge next to unpaid bills and takeaway menus. We were happy, not Instagram influencer, curated happy, just comfortable. We cooked together, fought about stupid things like whose turn it was to take out the rubbish, had sex at odd times because our schedules were chaos. We started talking about marriage in that half-joking, half-serious way people do. She'd see a ring in a shop window and make a joke about how if I ever proposed, there'd better not be rose petals, because she'd just think about how much work it would be to clean them up. One Friday after a particularly brutal week, a client's server crashed. Ryan forgot to schedule backups properly. It was a whole thing. I came home to candles. Proper ones, not just the little tea lights we buy in bulk from Kmart. The kitchen table was set with actual plates, not our mismatched chipped ones. Emma was in a dress I'd only seen her wear to weddings. For a wild second, my brain skipped straight to, oh my god, she's going to propose. It was stupid, I know, but that's where my heart went. Instead, she smiled nervously and said, sit, I made food that doesn't come from a box. Halfway through dinner, she reached into her pocket and slid a small velvet box across the table. My heart actually stopped. Relax, she said quickly, laughing at my face. It's not what you think. Inside was a ring, thin gold band, tiny stone, beautiful in a delicate way. It's a promise ring, she said, cheeks flushing. Before you make fun of me, yes, I know we're not 15. I wanted something that says, we are heading in that direction, even if we're not there yet. I picked it up with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Emma, I said, voice thick, you know I want. I know, she said, and I'm not trying to rush you, it makes me feel calm, thinking there's a path, even if it winds a bit. My throat had that tight, hot feeling you get right before you cry. I stood up, walked around the table, and got down on one knee next to her chair. Daniel, she hissed, eyes wide, I told you it's just a... We're going to look ridiculous if I don't do it properly at some point anyway, I said. Might as well practice. I didn't have a ring. I slipped the promise ring onto her finger and said, quietly but clearly, Emma, will you promise not to murder me when I forget to defrost the chicken, and to call me out on my bullshit when I let things slide, and to keep being the person I want to tell everything to? Her eyes went shiny. Yes, she whispered, obviously. We laughed, we kissed, we almost burned the dessert. It was one of those nights I replayed in my head later, trying to figure out where the script flipped. It flipped 6 months later with a phone call from a number I didn't recognize, and the words, "We need to discuss these discrepancies." The law firm McFarlane & Co., the big client, had changed accountants. The new one was going through old invoices and payments and noticed some issues. According to their records, they'd paid us on time in full for every project. According to ours, which I'd finally pulled everything together for because tax time was looming, we were missing about 20 grand. I went cold all over. 20 grand wasn't some rounding error. That was months of rent for the office, hardware we'd bought, the difference between stability and, hey, maybe we should just go back to working for someone else. "I'm sure it's just a mix-up," I heard myself say. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone very far away. "Let me talk to my business partner and get back to you." As soon as I hung up, I went straight to Ryan. He was at his desk, feet up, watching something on his phone with the volume low. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Got a call from McFarlane's accountant." His whole body stiffened, just for a second. If I hadn't been watching for it, I would have missed it. "Yeah," he said, dropping his feet and swiveling around. "They've got records of paying us for invoices we never received the money for," I said. $20,000 worth of records. He shrugged, but it was too forced, shoulders too high. "Probably bank error," he said. "I'll look into it." "Which bank?" I asked. My voice had dropped without my permission. "Ours or yours?" he frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, muscles in my jaw screaming, "I'm asking you a direct question. Did you divert those payments?" Silent. We stared at each other over the cheap office carpet, the hum of the Aircons suddenly deafening. He looked away first. "I was going to pay it back," he muttered. My body did this weird hot-cold wave thing. "You what?" "I was going to pay it back," he repeated, louder now, defensive. I needed it, short term. I had some debts, the credit card." I laughed, a short, ugly sound. "So you stole from us?" "Don't say it like that," he snapped. "You make it sound like I broke in with a balaclava. It's all in the system, isn't it? I wasn't hiding it, I just moved it, temporarily." "Without telling me, or asking," I said. "From the business account that pays my rent, my bills, her rent, our everything." He rolled his eyes. "You're so dramatic, man. I said I'd pay it back. I've been bringing in most of the clients anyway. I'm the one doing the pitch meetings, I thought." "You thought what?" I cut in. "That entitled you to skim 20 grand off the top." We shouted. It got loud, ugly. Words I'd never thought I'd say to him came out of my mouth, words like thief and conman. He called me ungrateful, controlling, said I'd never have had the guts to leave my safe job without him pushing me. Maybe some of that was true, didn't make what he did any less of a betrayal. Emma walked in on us mid-argument. She'd brought us coffee, because of course she had. She stood in the doorway, eyes flicking between us like someone watching a rally, then put the cups down slowly when she realized this wasn't a normal bicker. "What's going on?" she asked. I told her, bluntly, because I didn't have the energy left to soften it. Her face went through about 4 expressions in as many seconds. Disbelief, anger, calculation, something like fear. "Is that true?" she asked Ryan. He couldn't meet her eyes. "It's not as bad as it sounds." $20,000 that doesn't belong to you, she said, voice climbing, "because that sounds pretty bad." "I said I'd pay it back," he repeated, like that somehow made this okay. We dissolved the partnership within a month. It was messy, lawyers, accountants, awkward conversations with clients. The business technically survived, but it was gutted. So was I. Through it all, Emma stayed. She held my hand in meetings, sat on the floor with me when I went through paperwork at 2 a.m., told me I wasn't stupid. That trusting your best friend isn't a character flaw. She was angry with him, or at least she seemed to be. "He's not who we thought he was," she said one night, curled up on the couch in my hoodie, her hair piled on top of her head. I asked, raising an eyebrow. She shrugged, eyes on the TV. "He was my friend too." If the story ended there, it would have just been a business betrayal. A big one, sure, but manageable. Friend screws you over, you cut him off, you rebuild. Painful, but not cancerous. But life apparently looked at that and said, "Nah, we can stack this." In the fallout, Ryan and I stopped speaking. Properly. We went from talking daily to zero contact. He moved out of the shared office space, then out of the suburb entirely. Mutual friends did the awkward, we're not picking sides, dance that meant I saw him less at gatherings, heard about him more through other people. Then a year later, my mum got sick. I'm not going to go into details there because this post is already a novel, and that's a whole other genre of pain, but she was in and out of hospital for months. Chemo, complications, the whole horrible roller coaster. Emma was my rock through it, or that's what I told anyone who asked. She drove me to appointments, sat with me in waiting rooms, brought her bright, chatty energy into spaces that smelled like disinfectant and fear. Looking back, I can see where she started pulling away even then. Times she'd have to work late, when Mum asked after her. The way she'd go quiet if I talked too much about the future in front of my mum, who'd gotten very into the idea of us getting married while she was still around to see it. I don't want to talk about weddings in a hospital. Emma hissed at me in the car once after a long day. She's excited, I said, tired. It makes her happy. It makes me feel like I'm on a schedule, she shot back. We cooled down eventually, apologized, promised to communicate better, all the stuff you say. Then one night, about 6 months into Mum's treatment, I finished a late shift at the hospital. I'd taken some extra hours there for the stability, and came home to an empty apartment. That wasn't unusual by itself. Emma often had evening meetings with clients, shoots that ran late. What was unusual was her phone buzzing on the kitchen bench. It lit up with a notification, on my way from a number not saved as a name, then another a minute later, can't wait to see you. Now I'm not the type who dives for my partner's phone at the slightest suspicion. I hate that version of myself, but I was ragged, emotionally, raw, and something about that combination, her phone left behind, messages clearly meant for someone waiting for her, hit that tender, ugly spot inside me. I shouldn't have looked, I know, but I did. The thread was short, at least the part I could see, mostly logistics. Tonight, can you get away? I miss you. Stuff that, in context, could have been innocent and in another universe was. I scrolled up, thumbs shaking. At the top of the thread was a contact I hadn't seen in a year. Ryan. The world did that tilt thing again, like someone had grabbed the edges of reality and given it a shake. I sat down very carefully on one of the kitchen chairs, phone in hand, and forced myself to keep reading, even though every instinct screamed, put it down, you don't want to know. There weren't sexts or declarations of love. It wasn't like a soap opera. It was worse in a way. It was familiarity. Same place. I like your hair longer. I still hate coriander. Please be careful, he doesn't deserve this. That last one was from her. You know that thing where your ears ring so loudly, you can't hear anything else? That. She came back an hour later, keys jingling in the lock. I'd had enough time to run through about 50 different confrontations in my head and choose exactly none. In the end, the moment I saw her walk in, hair a little messy, cheeks flushed from the cold, I just heard myself ask, "How, Ryan?" She froze in the doorway like I'd hit her. "What?" "Your phone," I said, holding it up. I'd put it back where I found it, but I'd left the screen on, the last message front and center. "You forgot it." Her eyes flicked to the bench, then to my face. All the color drained from her. We're taught from rom-coms that this is where everything spills out in a dramatic monologue. It wasn't like that. It was halting, defensive, circular. "It wasn't planned," she said. "He's your friend too." We were both so hurt. "It just happened." Happened like he tripped and fell into her mouth. I barely remember what I said in response. I know the words "you chose him" came out of my mouth more than once. I know I said, "You watched what he did to me and then you picked him to cheat with." I know she cried, a lot. She's always been a pretty crier, tears clinging to her lashes like something out of a music video. It made me feel sick that part of me still noticed that even while everything else inside me was tearing. She said she'd been so angry with me at first about the business thing, because she felt like it was my responsibility, not Ryan, to keep everything together, that I let myself be blindsided, that she felt unsafe, like our future had been built on sand. "You were the one I depended on," she said, arms wrapped around herself. "And then that happened and I realized you're human. You make mistakes," I freaked out. "So you, what?" I asked. "Went to the least human option available." "He was there," she said, which is probably the most honest thing she said all night. "He understood. He was hurting too. We were both angry with you. One thing turned into another and you just kept not telling me," I finished. She didn't argue with that. We broke that night, officially. She packed a bag, tears still on her cheeks, saying, "I don't want to leave you like this," while still choosing to leave. That's the thing people don't talk about enough. How many times "I don't want to hurt you" comes right before the sharpest wounds. She went. Ryan didn't call. Of course he didn't. The months after are a blur I could describe in 10,000 words and still not make interesting to anyone who hasn't lived something similar. You know the montage: not eating enough, then eating only crap, sleep that comes in snatches if at all, the way every song, every street, every smell is a landmine. I blocked him on everything. I blocked her, then unblocked her, then blocked her again. I made it 3 weeks before I texted her something pathetic and raw. She replied with something careful and kind that made me feel worse, not better. "I never meant for this to happen," she wrote. "I care about you so much. I hope one day you can forgive me." I stared at the screen for a long time, and then threw my phone onto the couch hard enough that it bounced. Forgiveness is such a loaded word. People say it like it's this noble thing you should aspire to for your own peace. Maybe they're right. At the time, it felt like being asked to cosign my own humiliation. I pulled away from our friend group. Some of them tried to stay neutral. "We don't know what really happened," one of them said once when I made the mistake of going to drinks. "I do," I said, putting my beer down. "I was there." Meanwhile, life kept happening. My mum's health got worse, then, abruptly, it stabilized. My dad developed a new habit of texting me sunrises with captions like, "Today is a gift." That's why they call it the present. Dads and their memes. I threw myself into rebuilding the business solo. I picked up extra hospital shifts. I went to therapy because my GP looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you don't talk to someone, you're going to implode." The therapist, a woman named Karina with kind eyes and ruthless questions, asked me once, "What hurt you more, that she cheated or that she cheated with him?" I didn't even hesitate. "Him," I said. "Because he did it knowing your history, your vulnerabilities, your trust," she said. "Because he did it with context," I said. "Anyone can be an asshole. It takes a special kind of person to use all the parts of you they know to hurt you in the most efficient way." "You sound angry," she said. "I am," I said, then quieter. "And I miss them, both of them, sometimes, and then I get angry at myself for missing them." She nodded. "Two things can be true at once. You can miss the version of them that existed before this and still hate what they did. Grief is weird like that. It doesn't care if your loss is valid or not. It just sets up camp in your chest and unpacks." Fast forward 3 years to Mark's wedding. By that point I was functional, not healed in the Instagram sense, but I'd stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. I'd gone on some dates. I'd had one short relationship with a woman named Zoe that ended amicably when we both realized we were using each other as training wheels. I'd also given up on seeing Ryan or Emma at any shared events. Our friend group had quietly split into overlapping Venn diagrams. I had my subset, they had theirs. That seemed fine. When the invite to Mark's wedding came, I scanned it for familiar names and didn't see theirs. I went, convinced myself I could handle it. I was doing okay too. I wore a navy suit that actually fit. I made polite conversation with people at my table. I took the required number of awkward posed photos. I even laughed genuinely when the groom's speech got roasted. Then, during that gap between speeches and the first dance where everyone mills around refilling drinks, I turned around and there they were. They looked good. I hate that that was my first thought. Emma in a dark green dress she would have called classy slutty. Ryan in a grey suit, beard a little fuller, hair a little shorter, and their hands laced together, like it had always been that way. My stomach did this slow, cold twist. For a second I considered just leaving, walking out, calling a cab, texting Mark some bullshit about an emergency. Then Emma's eyes met mine across the room. I expected, I don't know, shock, guilt, something movie-worthy. What I saw was more complicated. A flinch, sure, then something like resignation. She said something to Ryan, squeezed his hand, that fucking hand-holding, and started walking toward me. Ryan hesitated, then followed. "Dan," she said as they reached me. "Hey." "Hey," I said. My voice sounded neutral. I was weirdly proud of that. "Didn't know you'd be here," she said. "Same," I replied. "Guess Mark invited everyone." "How have you been?" she asked, and the normalcy of the question made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. "Fine," I said. "You?" She opened her mouth, but before she could answer, Ryan stepped in like he couldn't help himself. "We're good," he said. "Busy. Business is booming, you know how it is." That was the first time he'd spoken directly to me in 3 years. His voice hadn't changed. I felt my hands curl into fists at my sides. "Did your accountant notice this time?" I asked. His jaw tightened, still on that. Emma shot him a look. "Not now." A wave of people moved between us and the dance floor. The DJ announced something about the bouquet toss. In the semi-chaos, we ended up slightly off to the side near a pillar, semi-sheltered from view. That's when she said it. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. And that's when I noticed. Her eyes were on me, but her hand was still in his. That was the moment something inside me, not broke, because it had already broken before. It was more like it settled. Like the last piece of the puzzle of how could they do this, slid into place with a dull little click. Because the thing is, I believe her. I truly think she never sat down and thought, how can I destroy him today? She just consistently chose herself in ways that wounded me. And Ryan, I don't know if he thought about it at all. I think I was collateral damage in his constant quest to feel like the main character. I looked at their hands, at the way his thumb was rubbing little circles on the back of hers, like they were in this together. I felt the old anger rise up, but there was exhaustion under it now. "Then why are you still holding his hand?" I asked quietly. She looked down like she was surprised to find it there. Her fingers twitched, she didn't let go. "I love him," she said, and there it was. Simple, awful. Ryan straightened like he'd been waiting for that line. "I know what I did was shitty," he said, looking at me. "I've wanted to say that for a long time. I messed up with the business with you. I was in a bad place and I stole from me and slept with my fiancée," I finished. He winced. "Yeah, that." There was a time that sentence would have gutted me. Hearing it spoken aloud in a hotel function room with cheap wine in my veins and years between us, it just felt factual, like reciting a weather report. "What do you want from me?" I asked, direct this time. Emma shook her head quickly. "Nothing, we don't want anything. We just, when we saw you, we couldn't just pretend not to. I needed you to know that I never wanted to hurt me," I said. "You've said that." "I mean it," she insisted. Her eyes were shiny, the fairy lights catching the tears. "I was selfish. I was scared. I made choices I can't undo. But I have hated the idea of you walking around thinking I did it to torture you. I was just trying to survive. It doesn't excuse anything. She trailed off, voice cracking. I looked at her for a long moment. At the curve of her collarbone, the way her lipstick had worn off in the middle. At the ring on her right hand, simple silver, not the gold promise ring she used to wear. Once upon a time, that face had been home. Now it was just familiar architecture. "I don't think about you that much," I heard myself say. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't a lie either. Not anymore. Not every day. Not like I used to. When I do, I'm mostly just tired. You both did what you did. You live with it. I live with it. That's it. Ryan opened his mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to apologize again. I held up a hand. "I don't need anything from either of you," I said. "Not an apology, not an explanation. You're happy, great, you're miserable. That's between you and your therapist. I paused, surprised to find that the next word didn't feel sarcastic. "I'm okay." Emma swallowed. "Do you forgive us?" There it was again, that word. I thought about all the nights I'd imagined this moment, all the speeches I'd written in my head. The ones where I yelled, where I told them exactly how small they'd made me feel. The ones where I was magnanimous and noble. The ones where I brought up every specific detail, every text, every late arrival home. In reality, all I felt was this strange, quiet distance. "I don't know if forgiveness is the right word," I said slowly. "I don't lie awake wanting bad things to happen to you. I'm not actively angry every time I hear your names anymore. I accept that this is what happened, that we're not the people we were when we were sitting on my kitchen floor drawing logos on scrap paper." I looked at Ryan. "You were my friend for 25 years. That's not nothing. You hurt me more than anyone has. That's also not nothing. Both those things exist. I don't need to flatten them into a neat moral." He nodded, eyes wet now too. "I miss you, man," he said, voice cracking in a way I'd never heard before. "Yeah," I said, "I miss who you were, but I think he only exists in my memory now." Silence stretched between us. The DJ called the bridesmaids to the floor. Someone laughed so loudly on the other side of the room that half the guests turned. "You really are okay?" Emma asked quietly. I thought about my little one-bedroom apartment with the plant I hadn't killed yet, about the patients who called me son when I changed their dressings, about Zoe and our awkward but sweet almost relationship, about the way my chest felt in the mornings now, still heavy some days, sure, but not crushed. "I'm learning how to be," I said. "Without you, without this," I gestured between us. Her shoulders slumped, like she'd been holding tension for years. "Good," she whispered. "You deserve that." "Yeah," I said, "I do." A waiter walked past with a tray of champagne. I grabbed a glass, more for something to do with my hands than anything. Look, I added, because some masochistic part of me still doesn't like leaving things unsaid. For what it's worth, there was a time you two were the best parts of my life. I'm not going to pretend I regret every second. That'd be a lie. But I also don't owe those past versions of us my present or my future. Emma nodded, tears spilling now. Ryan looked like he wanted to say something else, but for once, wisely, didn't. I lifted the glass slightly, not a toast exactly, more a punctuation mark. I hope you both figure your shit out, I said, for your sake, not mine. Then I turned and walked away. It wasn't cinematic, there was no slow clap, no meaningful glance from across the room. I went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, stared at myself in the mirror until my features settled. Then I went back out, found my table, and spent the rest of the night talking to an old uni friend about her kids and how tired she always is. Later, when the music got louder and the lights got lower, I ended up on the balcony with a guy named Sam I'd only met once before. We leaned on the railing, looking out over a car park and a Bunnings sign in the distance. Very romantic. Weddings, hey, he said, taking a drag of his cigarette. Every time I come to one, I feel like I should have achieved more by now. Same, I said then, without really planning to, added, just ran into my ex and my ex-best friend. They're together now. He winced theatrically. Ouch, you okay? I thought about it, about the hand-holding, the whispered, I never wanted to hurt you, the fact that my heart hadn't tried to escape through my ribs this time. Yeah, I said slowly, weirdly yeah, I think I am. He nodded, flicked ash into the tray. People hurt people, he said, not always because they're evil, sometimes because they're idiots, sometimes because they're scared, doesn't mean you have to stick around and let it keep happening. Is that your professional opinion? I asked. He grinned, professional divorce lawyer opinion, actually. We both laughed. I went home that night alone, crawled into bed sober enough to remember it all in the morning, and lay there staring at the ceiling. I expected the delayed reaction, the shakes, the tears, the anger. It didn't come. What came instead was this quiet sense of space. I don't think that's what Emma wanted when she whispered that she never meant to hurt me. I think she wanted absolution, closure, a ribbon tied around the mess. What I've learned, I'm still learning, is that closure isn't something someone hands you in a function room while holding the hand of the man who wrecked your life. It's something you give yourself at 2 a.m. on a random Tuesday when you choose not to stalk their socials, when you decide to go on another date even though your last love blew up, when you look in the mirror and see more than the person who got left. I used to replay that line of hers on a loop. I never wanted to hurt you. Like intention mattered more than impact. Like if I dug hard enough into her heart, I'd find proof she hadn't meant it, and that would somehow rewind time. Now, weirdly, it doesn't matter so much whether she wanted to or not. She did, they did, I survived. There are still days I feel it, don't get me wrong. Days where a song comes on, or I pass the cafe where we used to have breakfast, and a little ghost version of us sits in the corner of my mind. I let them, they're part of my story. But they're not the whole thing anymore. The whole thing is also my dad sending me blurry photos of his dog. It's my patient Harry telling me about the love of his life, and how she married someone else, and how he still smiles when he thinks of her. It's me learning how to cook something that isn't pasta. It's the quiet satisfaction of paying all my business bills on time, alone, with no mysterious, counting lags. It's standing on a crappy hotel balcony, talking to a divorce lawyer about nothing and realizing I didn't once think Emma would find this funny. So yeah, she whispered, I never wanted to hurt you, while holding the hand of the man who did. For a long time, that image was like a splinter under my skin. Now, it's just a story I tell on the internet to strangers, from the other side of something I once thought might kill me.